Hello and welcome back to the Debrief here on the Blood Red channel. I'm your host, Edward K, and I'm joined by Blood Red Zone, Matt Addison. And we're coming to you live just after Liverpool have beaten Ajax 3-0 away from home in the Amsterdam arena, sealing their place in the last 16 of the Champions League. Matt, we're going to dive straight in. The Reds reaching the knockouts of the Champions League amid, obviously, it's been a tough start in the Premier League, but we've managed to reach the last 16 with a game to spare. Obviously, that'll be against Napoli at home next in the next round of the Champions League fixtures. But how important is it for the Reds to have, reached the knockout stages already, and how big of a relief will it be?
Yeah, it's been a tough start to the season, hasn't it? I don't think anyone can argue with that, really. So to get through, particularly after what happened against Napoli in that first game, to have that Napoli game not meaning anything, obviously is a big thing, and it's a little bit unexpected that they've managed to do it. Obviously, the order of the fixtures have helped, playing Rangers back to back. We always thought that was going to be tough, but they should be able to go and win in those matches, and that's what they did. So yeah, it's job done, really, isn't it? They've got plenty of work still to do in the Premier League. This will certainly help in that they can make a few changes for match day 6. They won't be able to call on Naby Keita and Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, unfortunately, because they haven't put them into the Champions League squad. But hopefully a few other players can get a few minutes. I think that that will obviously be a big thing, and obviously Tottenham as well. I think that the Tottenham game is the same week as the last game of the Champions League, and obviously they're going to have to go and do something in that to get through to the knockout stages. So it's one less thing for Liverpool to think about. Certainly, the big thing that we've said all the way through the start of this season is just basically get as many points as you can in the Premier League, get through to the knockout stages, use the World Cup to reset, go again, really, in terms of a Liverpool perspective. And it could be a very, very different Liverpool team by the time it's mid-February and the last 16 takes place. It could be a very, very difficult Liverpool team that whoever it is that they get drawn has to come up against. So, yeah, the main thing was to get through. They've done that. They've given themselves an extra little opportunity to rotate and have a little rest at Anfield next week. But yeah, it was one of those that could have gone either way tonight, but I think really important to get the first goal, really important to go on and get a positive result there.
Yeah, certainly a big boost getting that wrapped up, obviously heading into the World Cup. But Darwin Nunez at it again. Obviously, we won't mention the one where you're doing it at the post within the first half, but another headed goal. Obviously, I think we are starting to see a much more confident Darwin Nunez. He's really starting to sort of ramp up the goal tally now. Is this sort of starting to show signs of the striker that Liverpool have paid that money for?
Yeah, it's just more of the same, isn't it, really? He's just a complete maverick. You just don't know what you're going to get. If you give him a big opportunity, it could be a goal, it could be a miss, and there's not much, in between. It's very, very strange sometimes, some of the things that he does, some of the decisions he makes, but he's one of those players that I think at some point it will click. I think the fact that he's getting into these positions, imagine if he starts scoring these that he keeps missing, suddenly the goals suddenly are going to jump up a huge amount, and he's already got a decent goals record as it is. So yeah, it was really important, I think, for him to score after that miss. You want to bounce back quickly, and obviously he does with a much, much more difficult chance. Brilliantly placed header into the corner. So yeah, it was a good performance from him. I think it was important for Mohamed Salah as well to get on the score sheet. Brilliant pass from Henderson, brilliant finish from him. And I think for the two of them, I've written about it post-match on Liverpool.com. You think, at the weekend Salah played but didn't really have a kick, and Darwin Nunez didn't play because of his injury. For both of those players to come and score and put in a performance that they did tonight, I think is hugely important. It's obviously a team thing, isn't it? The momentum that you want to start to build up. But I think for those two players as well, if Liverpool are going to do anything this season, they're going to have to get the goals from those two sources. Obviously, Jota, Diaz, they'll come back and they'll be ready for the new year. But between now and then, it's very much a case of Salah and Nunez, I think, being chiefly among the goals. If it's not them, you wonder where the goals are going to come from. So yeah, I think it's been really important, I think, tonight that Liverpool have got those two players back on the score sheet. And as soon as Darwin Nunez scored, he just looked a lot more confident and was starting to sprint around and buzz. And I think if we can get him into a bit of form and a bit of a rhythm and get him scoring, I mean, he already is scoring almost every game that he plays, isn't he? But if he can continue to do that, play himself into a bit of form, it is going to click at some point. And as soon as it does click, Liverpool are going to have a really good player.
Yeah, we'll take a step back from the attack for now and look at the defence. Another clean sheet for Liverpool. Obviously, a lot more defensive struggles towards the start of the season, and a lot of people have been talking about how obviously this new system that Jurgen Klopp's implemented in recent weeks has seemed to offer more defensive solidarity. Is tonight just more evidence of that?
I think it is to an extent, but I do wonder, the start of the game wasn't great. I think if Berghuis scores that goal the chance, that he sort of dances around a couple of players and hits the post, I think it could be a very different game. I think we've seen it a couple of times, really, that the Forest game was kind of the reverse of this, where whoever scored first in that game was going to go on and win, and you could kind of see that coming a mile off. And I think it was similar tonight. Ajax started really well. They had the crowd there. They had one or two chances. I think if they'd have been a little bit more clinical and not missed those chances, then possibly it could have been different as it was. Obviously, Liverpool get the first goal, and up to that point, neither team had shown a lot of quality, I don't think, in the game. I think both teams were finding it a bit difficult to string passes together and create a bit of dominance. So whoever scored first, that was going to be a crucial thing. Obviously, Ajax had to win tonight to get themselves through. Didn't do that. Liverpool only needed a point, but it was one of those where you thought whoever scored first would go on and win it. And thankfully, it was Liverpool. So the defence was shored up a little bit. I'm not so sure it was to do with the system. I think it was probably to do more with the game state. But, if Liverpool can start scoring first in games again, which you'd expect a team like them to be able to do a little bit more often, whichever one it is, whether it's the system, whether it's the game state, it doesn't really matter. As long as they score first and go on and win, then I think they'll be all right.
Yeah, and we've mentioned two of the goal scorers already, but obviously the third was Harvey Elliott getting himself another Champions League goal, and he didn't have to wait for about a 5-minute VAR check to celebrate this one in front of the travelling Liverpool fans, thankfully. But obviously, like I said, another Premier League Champions League goal for Harvey Elliott. What's that going to do for his confidence levels?
Yeah, brilliant goal as well, wasn't it, on his right foot? Doesn't use that too often, but I think it's just another step forward, isn't it? It's confidence again for him. I think it's proof really of him fitting into this Liverpool team. I think that the connection was there. It was Salah, wasn't it, that passed the ball into him for that goal. There was a couple of moments in the game where you sort of saw that link up, and I've struggled to work out really up to now where it is that Harvey Elliott plays. I don't think he's quite a number 8. I don't think he's quite a player that fits into a midfield 3, but he's not quite a forward player either. I think this new system, the new formation seems to work for him. And obviously the biggest barrier really to him playing on the right-hand side is that Mohamed Salah's there as well. So what Jurgen Klopp has found is a system really where you can accommodate both of those players. Obviously Salah, as he gets older, I think is going to benefit more from being inside and being central and kind of doing what Cristiano Ronaldo has done sort of over the last sort of 5 or 6 years, becoming that number 9. I think that's the route that I can see Salah taking. But obviously then that gives an opportunity for someone like Harvey Elliott to come in. And like I say, I just think the system really suits him at the moment. I'm not still 100% sold that they'll stick with it long term. Obviously, the question marks over the defence and what happens with the midfield and all the rest of it. There is still a few question marks over it, but I do think Harvey Elliott is one of those that's really sort of benefited from that. So, yeah, the more goals he can sort of get, fantastic. The more he can kind of be involved in these matches and these moments, the better it'll be for his confidence. But yeah, to be doing that at 19, to look as mature as he does, it's a huge testament really to the quality that he's got. Obviously, Liverpool can't at the same time rely on him, and he can't be the answer to all of their problems, but he's certainly helping them out at the moment.
Yeah, I've spoken about one of the younger players on the pitch, but obviously moving on to two of the more elder statesmen, Fabinho and Henderson have, they've had their critics at times this season. Fabinho in particular, obviously, hasn't really been putting in the level of performance that you're used to from him. But both of them tonight, put in pretty decent performances in Liverpool's midfield. Obviously, Fabinho was fairly quiet, but I mean, you'd rather that than obviously some of the horrible performances you've been putting in and they've been drawing criticism. So, yeah, what did you think of their performance in Liverpool's midfield tonight?
I think you're spot on with Fabinho. I think he was okay tonight. You're not coming away thinking he's missed a load of tackles and he's given the ball away in daft areas. So I still think there's a bit of a concern over that midfield area. I think it was okay tonight. They did pretty well. I think that the two of them and Fabinho was doing some sensible things. I think the first sort of 25, 30 minutes, it was a bit of a mess in terms of the formation. I'm not quite sure what they were going for, but like you said before, as soon as they got the goal and found a bit of form within that new sort of system, the new variation on it again tonight, slightly different with different players in different positions. I think it obviously worked, and the midfield in the end makes itself look a lot more solid than possibly what it could have been if they'd have gone 1-0 down. But yeah, there was a few moments in there that concerned me a little bit. There was Jordan Henderson getting caught a little bit high up the pitch at certain times, but then of course the reverse of that is that's where the opening goal comes from, isn't it? It's Henderson in that pocket on the left, passing the ball into Salah to score. So you can't kind of have it both ways. I think if you're going to celebrate the goal that Salah scores and say well done to Jordan Henderson, which obviously we're going to, then you can't at the same time say that he was caught. That's obviously something that they're working on. It's something that they think they can do, and you don't want to get too far ahead of yourself. Don't know whether Jude Bellingham's going to happen, but it would certainly interest me to see someone a bit like him, a bit younger, a bit more dynamic, a bit more able to do both that Jordan Henderson maybe can't do. Maybe he can't get up there and do all the assists and the creative stuff and get back as well as quickly as he needs to. Maybe that is the plan long term, and maybe it's a position that Curtis Jones might be able to do if he develops a little bit more. Maybe it's something that Harvey Elliott could do on the opposite side. So there are positives to take from it. It's not all sort of bad in terms of the way that Liverpool started the game tonight, but there was a couple of moments where they were a little bit high up the pitch for my liking, I would say. But listen, it worked. It got the opening goal, and like I've said a few times now, that was the crucial thing, really. If that is going to lead to the opening goal, fantastic. I still do think, though, it's a little bit of a coin toss, really. If you've got those players high up the pitch, either you're going to score or you're going to concede. Sometimes I'd like Liverpool to just be a little bit more controlled.
Yeah, you mentioned Curtis Jones there, and he's obviously only seen briefly tonight after not the best of performances starting away at Nottingham Forest, but he's sort of finding his feet back in the side, obviously still only fresh back from injury, really. In this run up to the World Cup, obviously with Liverpool having a lot of their left-sided players like Jota and Diaz out, just how big of a role do you think he can play in the next few weeks in that run up to the World Cup?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of him. I think, the Forest game, people have given him a bit of stick for, but I think it's just a position he'd never played before. I think if you're going to get the best out of him, he's got to play on that left-hand side. We saw him come on today for Darwin Nunez and have half an hour on the left-hand side. I think that's probably his best role. If you're going to play a 4-2-3-1, 4-4-2, whatever you want to call it, play him on the left. I'm not quite sure why they did what they did with him at the weekend. I think that was quite strange. Obviously, Jordan Henderson can't play every single minute, but it would have made a lot more sense to play him, I think, on Saturday. And we kind of saw that Jones, just back from an injury as well, he is one of those players that kind of needs to ease himself back into action. So, yeah, I think he's going to get a lot more minutes, but hopefully those minutes come on the left-hand side. And I think some of his best performances, certainly for the academy, but I would say as well for the senior team have come in that position. If you give him a bit more license, let him sort of free himself really from more defensive sort of work, then I think that's where you get the best out of him. He is a player that can score and assist and be really creative. And Liverpool, let's be honest, don't have a load of those at the moment. They do need a bit of a spark at certain points. And I think they have struggled. They certainly struggle against Forest. I think if it had been, say, Henderson in midfield on that day and him slightly further forward, maybe it could have been a little bit different. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of him. I'm glad he got some more minutes tonight. I'm sure we'll probably see him again at the weekend in some form, probably off the bench again. But as long as those minutes come on the left-hand side, I think we'll slowly start to see a much better version of Curtis Jones. But we shouldn't forget how long he's been out injured. He spent a lot of last season out injured as well. He is sort of 21, getting older a little bit. He's not one of those really, really young kids anymore. He's certainly not Stefan Bajcetic, who came on and did really well. But I do think there's a lot more development to come from him, but the potential is certainly there.
Yeah, and we'll finish by looking ahead. Obviously, one game left in the Champions League, as we mentioned previously, at home against Napoli. It would take a bit of a beating of them to top the group. I think it would be. We need a four-goal lead. I think so. Would put us top of the group. Obviously, I mean, we've seen a lot crazier things happen at Anfield in the Champions League. Is that something you think the Reds are going to have in the back of their mind, or will they be settling for second?
I think you probably have to settle for second. I think it's a hard one, really. You could go all out, and I'm not saying it's even possible, but let's say Liverpool did sort of beat Napoli by however many goals, 4 or 5, whatever it is, to get through and top the group. It's unlikely to happen anyway, but even if it did happen, you might then still get a difficult team. And I think if Liverpool finish second, obviously, there are certain disadvantages to that. You could get one of the big boys, but equally you could get Club Brugge if you finish second, because I think they're going to top their group, aren't they? So it depends, really. You can't overthink it too much. I think the biggest thing, really, for Liverpool is just that they got through. I'd expect them to make a few changes. I can't see them trying to go and outscore Napoli. I just can't see a team like Napoli getting beat by that many. They've been absolutely fantastic so far this season. I think they'll back themselves to come to Anfield and get the result that they want. But I don't know whether Jurgen Klopp will make enough changes for my liking. I'd like to see a lot of changes and lots of players given a rest in that week. But whether he'll do that, I'm not too sure. But that's certainly what I'd be doing. I think for me, they've got through. Just take the second place and see who you get on that draw in the November the 5th, I think, or November the 7th, I think it is, isn't it? Whoever they get, I think, you've got to kind of think that Liverpool will be in a very different shape as well. Even if they did get one of the biggest teams, it's going to be a very different Liverpool team in a couple of months' time that takes to the field in that tie.
Yeah, wherever they finish and whatever the result, Liverpool will obviously be playing in the last 16 of the Champions League after that World Cup break. But that's all we've got time for here on the debrief today. So from myself and from Matt Addison, it's goodbye for now.